We're good to go.
Go. Wake me
Go.
up before you go.
That's what I was thinking. Using the right tool for the job. We've spoken about apps a few times, and this episode is going to be a little bit different. It's still going to be app-ish related.
It's not going to be any different. You are fooling yourself if you think we have spent this entire season talking about apps.
A website is not an app.
Yeah, true.
Exactly.
We have not been talking about apps.
It's still going to be talking about the application of the tool, though.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well done. That was big brain.
It's going to be a little bit of a Q&A as well, because I think you're going to ask me some questions. I'm going to try and give some silly answers to those questions.
Thanks. Or we're just going to completely nerd out. Yeah, so using the right tools for the job. And so this is kind of my entire business, and as a private plug, this is kind of part of what I'm going to be exploring in my own podcast launching in January, about like finding the right solutions for you, figuring out what they actually are, not just tools, but also business models, marketing shit. It's around finding the right thing to create simplicity in a way that works for you. So many pitch there, blah blah. See, I can market.
Market good.
I market good. They do. I market good. A good market.
A really odd side comment. I actually wrote something like that in my recent video on YouTube when I was exploring note taking. I said that I think midlife crisis video was a year ago, but it wasn't a year. It was like I said it was the beginning of this year, but actually it was the end of last year. So I was like, yeah, no, my brain memory not good.
That's something to talk about. I'm exploring personal.ai right now, and was really fascinated. It's just this thing that I found randomly.
I was going to say, what? Who? How?
Creating your own. I think so. Let me get the website up.
This was not planned. Was not planned.
No.
You've gone, oh, there was that thing that interested me, like that one time last week or something.
It's been in my head. It's around creating a human AI based on yourself. You take everything you're thinking about and talking about, and it creates an artificial intelligence of you. So you can ask questions about you. So what triggered this was the fact you say you forgot things. The idea being, as the AI creates its own written and visual memories, like out of stacks of what you've been saying. You sync your Google Calendar, you sync your Twitter, you can record audio in the background of your microphone, and then it takes what you've been speaking about. It's really fascinating. Really fascinating. I'm exploring it at the moment. I haven't finalized my thoughts on it. It's just something that I'm in the playing stage of exploring right now, so I have no kind of confirmed thoughts, which is great, because actually that relates to this. Sometimes you don't know whether it's the right tool yet, and there's a point where you actually have to explore a solution and kind of test a hypothesis.
Science.
Test the science hypothesis of like understanding what you want to achieve. Like for me, I'm exploring a tool because one, I'm intrigued by the idea of it, and two, like I struggle with my memory. I'm always working really fast, and as soon as I come up with an idea, it immediately disappears out of my head. Everything I'm going to say in this thing today is probably going to get out of my head. Because
I'm going to caveat that and say most people's memory is bad in that use case, because our brain is not built to store shit.
Like absolutely. We can store files between the research. Like, look, I wouldn't call it research. It's stuff I've read everywhere. To stop you from ranting, it's like 5 to 7 pieces of information, like chunks of information that we can store at a time. Cue your.
I'll give you that. I'll let you off.
And now I'm intrigued by every reason why I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. It's it's
It's
nuance.
grossly simplified, which I do know.
Yeah, it's nuanced. So yeah, it's between 4 and 8, not 5 and 7. 5 and 7 is average, but when you look at individuals, neurodivergent individuals typically have less, looking at 4 chunks, sometimes even 3, and then some
And chunks
individuals.
is not necessarily, also just to clarify, chunks is not one piece of information. It's like a group
Yeah.
of information.
And then some individuals genetically can have like 8 pieces of information, like as chunks. Chunks can be as small as a name or as large as an experience.
Yeah.
And
we can only store
that comes down to like grouping and chunking and lots of like dendrites in the brain essentially attached to neurons. But yeah, we won't go there.
We're just digging right down deep immediately. It's like we're not even 5 minutes in and we're already talking about that. We have lost most people. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I will stop. Yeah.
I don't want you to stop. I want to keep talking about it, but we're recording.
Yeah, no, that's another research dive. Actually, here we go. Here's a tangent, or here's a segue back to where we were going. You can go and have a look at Wikipedia about that.
Well done. So, Danny, how would I go about exploring that?
For those that are listening on the podcast, you need to go to the video on YouTube just to see John's like amazing drama performed. It was a great performance. Yeah. So the Wikipedia is a website that I was told at school, don't use it. It's bad. Bad Wikipedia. Never use it. And I didn't. I just didn't. Bad sources.
Bad Wikipedia. Get down. Get down.
Yeah. That's literally what I had in my head. It's like every teacher I ever spoke to, whenever I went to Wikipedia, like, what are you doing on Wikipedia? It's like, finding stuff out. No, don't use it. Don't use it. Bad, Danny. Bad research, Danny. I was like, okay, fine. And I just sort of shrugged it off. And for those that haven't seen the video that I posted on my channel yesterday, Midlife Crisis spoke about Wikipedia and again sort of shrugged it off, like open research. Oh yeah, it's this thing. But actually, assuming the page is edited in a somewhat cohesive manner, there is a lot of research you can find. Even pages that are pants still have a couple of sources in there because you need a source in a page. So it could just be 1 or 2 papers that you find and then you can put into another tool like Research Rabbit and explore, or it could be a fairly cohesive page where someone like myself that's really nerdy puts a couple of references in.
Couple 121.
That it was an interesting topic.
Yeah, it is an interesting topic. Okay, so how do you know which is a good, like, how do you know when to trust it and when not to? Like, this is the question that, because obviously you come from a point of like, Wikipedia is bad, it's just the people badly editing pages, blah, 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 blah. I understand there is a scoring system, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't scored. So how do you know when something is valuable and when it's just BS?
So, trying to keep this simple because the editing side of Wikipedia is extremely old-fashioned and overly complicated. Essentially, every Wikipedia article can be assigned to a project. A project is a social construct of lots of people that are interested in one thing. I say one thing, that one thing could be medicine. Like the Wiki project medicine essentially has loads of articles attached to it. You can go and everyone can go and type in Wiki Project Medicine into the Wikipedia search bar, and you'll go to the Wikipedia project for medicine. They can then talk about all of those topics and all those articles. What that project does, so what that group of people do, is they edit the pages specific to medicine and they can then grade them. So the grading goes from unassessed, there is no assessment. Normally they're pages that have just been made and no one really knows about them yet. Then there is a stub, which is, it could literally be a sentence on a page, or it could be a couple of paragraphs that don't really make much sense. There's no citations. It's just someone has started a page with, most of the time, unfactual information. You can see what grading a page is by going into the talk page, because that is how projects grade them. So every article if you go to the talk page, you will be able to see what projects it's in. So you may actually have 3 or 4 projects on the same article, and medicine may say this article is a start page, which is above stub. So stub is it's just begun. Start is there's some cohesive stuff in there. So medicine may say this is a start page, but the health and fitness project may go, actually, we think it's a C page, which is the grade above start. So it's very subjective, which is why the nature of the grading system is interesting for me as a researcher, because you can go into any article, and if it's in multiple pages, most of the time the gradings are the same. But you can go in and say, oh, well, this project is a medicine project. How many people are in the medicine project? Oh, there are a load of doctors in the medicine project. How many people are in the health and fitness? Oh, they're just general, normal, everyday people. Maybe the medicine project are being more stringent with their categorization. That's one way of looking at it. But generally, most gradings are the same. So it goes stub, start, C, B, A. But to get to B, there needs to be peer research. So a C, anyone can do it. For a B grade, there needs to be at least 2 people, 2 editors that have looked at the article and gone, yes, this is a B. To get to an A, it needs to go through an assessment process in the project and say, so normally you have 3 or 4 editors go in and go, okay, the citations are all correct. Everything that you have said is cited or referenced to some extent. And there is a somewhat cohesive summary. It's not random points being put all over the place. And then it will be put to B, then A, then GA, then FL, and then FA. FA is right at the top. And to see those top gradings, if you go to the top right of an article, it'll either have a silver star for an FA grade or a circle with a plus for a good. And you'll be able to see all of that on the articles. But at the end of the day, the Wikipedia article is a summary of sources, most of the time sources given by multiple editors. And that's how I think we should use Wikipedia. Rather than a source itself, because that's what papers are for, it's a summary, a conversation of lots of different sources, lots of ideas, normally all put into one. Is there bias? Yes, because people, you can't get rid of bias. So yeah, I spoke for a while. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm really, for me, I'm really fascinated by how we can use Wikipedia because it's quite done right. I mean, I looked at the page that you shared earlier, and I'm just like, wow, there's so much value in it. Like, I started playing with it because of what you were talking about. I think it was in our last recording session where we were just talking generally before the episode or after the episode of like how good actually it can be and how much information. So I used it. I started using it in some of the research that I was doing recently as a time-saving tool to find the papers without having to navigate Google Scholar, which quite frankly is
Sucks.
awful. It really sucks. Whereas
it's a search engine, that's all it is.
Yeah, but it's not very, even as a search engine, it's not a very good one.
No. I totally agree with that.
I mean, this is going to be more of a me asking Danny questions and Danny answering. So if you don't like Danny talking, you're probably going to want to go now. But honestly, most
everyone leaves.
I mean, to be quite frank, most people come for Danny because you're the one that talks more. Because I'm just more interested in what you have to say.
Shucks.
So, I'd like to hear your thoughts around using Wikipedia as a starting place for research. For those of us who can't deep dive literally all day like you can, because that is a factor here is like time and being able to spend the time that you do investing in research. So talk a little bit about the other side of like the value of using Wikipedia for people who don't have as much time.
Yeah, so I think as a researcher myself, I go to Wikipedia to start the research process anyway. So even even the professors of the world use Wikipedia. If they don't know something, they still go to Wikipedia. It's not like, oh no, I'm too good for that. No, they still go to Wikipedia. Most of the time, professors, if they know the area topic, or roughly have an idea about it, they'll go, oh, this is the article I want. They'll read the first 2 lines of the lead section, which is the section right at the top of the article. Have a look at the table of contents, which is automatically generated, so editors don't have to worry about that, and see if there's any area that has been specifically spoken about that they're interested in. If it is, they'll go to that section and they'll use the inline links to find papers specifically for a point, a highlighted point. Or they'll just go straight to the bottom. But if you go straight to the bottom of a good article, you'll just get a block of, there's 120 articles. What? Yeah, you just get lost. So looking for a section and then looking for the inline link to the article makes it easier to find articles specifically for what you're looking for. To give an example, active recall, testing effect, retrieval practice, all of them are essential.
Everybody needs to go to the testing effect page. This is Danny Hatcher at work, and it's a terrifying thing.
That's 4 days. It took me 4 days to write that page. But yeah,
it's beautiful. 121 references.
You're just sold on the amount of reading I did in 3 days. I basically did three days of reading, 1 day of editing the page, and it's not even that big of a page.
No, it's quite a small page in comparison.
Yeah, but those 3 things are essentially the same thing in research. But if I want to have a look at, okay, what is retrieval practice? I want to know some of the retrieval practice papers. So I can just go to the inline link after retrieval practice, click on there. Okay, there's the retrieval practice papers. If I want to know what active recall is, well, I need to know the active recall paper. Yes, you can go Control F and find active recall. That's if it's in the name of the paper, because some papers talk about topics, but don't actually have it in the title because they're talking about something else. A paper I can think of, they said when and why to practice test, and it's literally all about active recall. It's quite a poor paper in comparison to the other research that I found, but it was an interesting paper talking about active recall, and there were some points in there. So I referenced the paper next to active recall. So it saves time having to find those papers, because when you go Google Scholar and type in active recall, it always comes up with the same papers. And most of the time those papers, like you'll get 3 or 4 copies of the same thing because it's been posted on different places. You're like, I've already got this reference. Why am I clicking on it for the 4th time?
That's what I was when I was doing some research for a workshop that I ran. I found the same couple of papers all the time. I mean, thankfully I had already spoken to you, and so I went via Wikipedia, found other papers, put that into Rescue Rabbit, and I'm just like, ooh, gold, and ooh, collection. Rescue Rabbit, not Rescue Rabbit. Research Rabbit.
Thank you.
Rescue Rabbit. Oh my god.
Rescue the rabbit
from hours of research. So there we go.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Research Rabbit. I went into Research Rabbit, put those papers in, and then found 100 more of like, oh wow, this is cool. Okay, fine. It's now time to create another collection. Oh right, yes, absolutely. Oh, okay, another collection time. Oh, please give us sub collections. Now.
Yes. So when it comes to Wikipedia and sort of fact checking stuff, it can be nice because when you are reading through something, you don't have to read the whole paper. Most of the time, the inline reference, you go to the inline reference and it will take you to the page most of the time in the journal. Just read the abstract. If the abstract, if you're not that into research, if the abstract just says roughly what it's cited to say, you're safer trusting a researched paper that's been referenced by a Wikipedia editor than a comment on a blog somewhere.
Yeah.
Is it going to be factually true and not have any mistakes? No. But unless you are going to research that word, that topic, that thing, that point, you're never going to get that from any source. So I think Wikipedia, with competent editors referencing with a couple of academic papers that has been condensed in an article around other topics, because even though there may only be one inline reference, guaranteed 1 or 2 of the other papers referenced in that sentence or paragraph will also talk about that thing somewhere. it just means there's been research in it and there is some reason behind whatever has been said.
Nice.
Yeah. So it makes research quicker, and I think it's safer to trust than a lot of sources. Still not the safest. Research is certainly the safest, but research is, one, hard to get hold of, two, can cost money sometimes, and three, painfully irritating to read sometimes. So it's nice to get a summary in a page. And I think the sort of like the side benefit of it is, because of the way Wikipedia works with backlinks and like normal links, like going 2 pages through like the clicking of pages, like hyperlinks, you can then go to related areas and topics quite quickly. Or if you don't quite understand something that's being spoken about, you can just go through the link to the page, especially when it comes to health science, or just, I guess, science in general. There are loads of terms that are used in like jargon and lingo in the field, but aren't well understood by some people. And even people in the fields don't fully understand some of the concepts. I'm going to go a little bit sideways for a second. Fatigue can't be defined because there is subjective, objective measures of fatigue, which is state and trait fatigue, which perceived fatigability is different from perceived fatigue. Objective fatigability is different from objective fatigue. State fatigue and trait fatigue are both use fatigability measures. And all of those terms can be a Wikipedia article. But people in exercise science won't know what all of those terms mean, or the components and elements of those terms. So they'll go to a Wikipedia article to confirm what it is, or go to a paper from somewhere to confirm what it is, so they really know what they're talking about. Hopefully that was a useful example, and I didn't just say lots of words for no point.
No, it's interesting because it kind of goes into us and what we're doing with this podcast of like, what do words mean? What are they around? What are they about? It opens up more conversations around figuring more things out, using the right tools for the job, and understanding that there isn't necessary. I think the right tools is the wrong phrasing, because I don't think there are specifically one correct tool for everything. Because of course, Wikipedia is often referenced as the wrong tool for research. It's not a good tool for research because it's done by lots and lots of people.
Sort of.
So I'm intrigued. Do you know why Wikipedia is seen as a
bad tool? Because of its history. Well, like when you think about the history of Wikipedia, when it started, first 2-3 years, anyone can edit it. So literally anyone was doing everything. You'd have loads of rubbish up on every page, and you can still have loads of rubbish up on every page. But it was a new thing and people just wanted to edit it. And it's funny, when you go into the vandalism conversations, most vandalism is done because people want to see if they can. Not because they want to, they're just like, can I change this? Oh, I can, I did. And then they don't change it back. Or they do it for a bit of a joke at school or at college or whatever. They go into a page and put dick in the middle of a sentence, like, idiot. And that was very difficult to monitor to start with, because so now there are bots. There are like 7 main bots in Wikipedia that go through the edits. And if it looks like vandalism, it will just get rid of it. And there are other bots that get rid of other things, but there are also editors that look at certain pages. So at the start of Wikipedia, there weren't any bots. Vandalism was very hard to get rid of because people just go back in and just put the thing back in. So it was just this constant editing war of wrong, right, wrong, right, wrong, right. And it just became difficult to know what was true, what wasn't true. Now Wikipedia is kind of like grown up a bit. It's not like the 5-year-old that's doing like loads of stuff and eating electricity plugs. It's kind of like a
eating electricity plugs.
Yeah, putting fingers in sockets and eating wires and sockets and they're not like, it's not like 5 anymore. It's growing up. Yeah, that's the analogy I have in my head. I have a baby like sitting on the floor, like, putting his finger in a plug socket, like chewing a thingy. Yeah. I know that doesn't happen, but that's what I have in my head. The wire's not connected, of course. It's just like chewing on it because, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, at the start of, a window into my mind. It helped me remember stuff. Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah. So at the beginning of Wikipedia, they are that's the image I have for the beginning of Wikipedia. It's just completely chaotic. And then it sort of like grew up and it became this, I guess, like teenager. It thinks it knows what it's doing. It thinks it can do everything and has all the answers. It doesn't. And lots of people were doing lots of things on Wikipedia, and they were kind of put on a pedestal. I think this is like 2016 to 2013 to 2016 years ish. And there were loads of wiki projects. Loads of people were active. Loads of people were engaged and doing all this stuff. And that's when a lot of the gradings, the guidelines, all of the different things, sort of procedures and policies were put in place. But they still didn't know really where Wikipedia was going. Now it's at a point where the people that are editing Wikipedia for the sake of it, like, hey, I'm just going to mess around and do this, don't care anymore. It's just, I edited Wikipedia, so what? So if people do edit Wikipedia, most of the time, the people that care will go in and go, no. But the people that have just vandalized it, they've moved on. They don't care. It's not a significant thing. So it's grown up. And a lot of people need to realize that it's grown up a bit. And I think the more adults, like I say adults, not in they need to be 70 or they need to be doing academic research, just mature individuals editing the page, the better it's going to be.
So with that in mind, let's say that, like, where do you start? If you're interested in being an adult on Wikipedia.
Wikipedian. They've got a name.
Oh, okay.
They have meetups as well, which I did not realize. Like I met up in London with some other Wikipedians. It was the nerdiest, like 3-hour conversation ever. But it was so cool. Anyway.
That sounds amazing. So let's say that you want to start and that you're inspired by this conversation around Wikipedia and the growth of Wikipedia and the maturity of Wikipedia, and you want to I kind of like that. I have some thoughts on interesting subjects and topics and things that I want to explore and get other viewpoints on. What do you do? How do you start?
I think the first thing is everyone has started because I think everyone has used Wikipedia. Everyone knows that you can push in links and go to different pages. And everyone knows that there's an article on the page. I think the easiest way to start with Wikipedia, to my frustration, there currently isn't a how-to video on Wikipedia. There are some Wikipedians that have done some stuff, but it's very limited. All documentation on Wikipedia is on Wikipedia. So if you want to find something out, like search on Wikipedia, but it may be buried a bit. So as with almost every tool, app, thing you use, push all the buttons. just push all the buttons. Like my first day of being a Wikipedian was literally pushing every button I saw. I went to the top, I logged in, I made an account because I knew I wanted to do some sort of editing. And then I just pushed all the buttons. I pushed the home button. This is how I found out about backlinks. It's how I found about statistics on pages, counts of pages, how I can edit stuff. There's a visual editor, there's a code editor, you can talk on every page, all of the different things. I just pushed all the buttons. I plan on making a how-to Wikipedia video, but it's gonna be an interesting one. Like I don't really know how to format it or do it. Maybe we can have a conversation about that. But yeah, how to get started. If you don't want to edit, just push all the buttons on Wikipedia. And then explore Wikipedia. Try and understand.
What if you do? So what if you're interested in
editing,
helping and supporting and contributing?
Go to the talk pages. Go to the talk pages and either read the conversations or engage in the conversations of what's going on. Like go to an article. What I did to start with. So I guess from an editor's perspective, if you do want to edit, make an account to start with, so your IP address isn't posted on every edit that you make, which people don't realize. If you don't have an account and you make an edit, the IP address of the edit is saved. and it is saved forever in Wikipedia. Just as a heads up. So I would suggest making an account. That way the IP address is hidden behind the username in the account, so no one can see it apart from, it's not even admins of Wikipedia. It's like the people way up top. There's like 4 people, but they'd have to actively go and find it. So yeah, make an account. And the account is essentially a page. It's just a user page that anyone can click to and see. You don't even have to have anything on it. My page, I have stuff on it. You can make subpages in there and go to my user page, type in user:Danny Hatcher in Wikipedia, and you'll find my user page. Click on there, and you can literally just copy and paste all of that stuff over. But make an account, and then find an article that you're interested in. Read the talk page, read the page, the article, and then make an edit. And when I say make an edit, if there's a word in there there is a page on Wikipedia for it, just link to the page, just so you get used to what editing feels like. It sounds silly, but making an edit on Wikipedia when you're trying to be serious, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of like posting the first video of your YouTube channel. Like people might see this, like they might delete it, might get rid of it. People might not like it. Be brave is one of the policies of Wikipedia. So make that link, and if someone watching the page disagrees, they'll just revert the link. They'll just revert the edit and say this isn't right because of X, Y, Z. Or they may just revert it, and if they do revert it, you can have a conversation with them and say, I saw you reverted this link. I'm new to editing Wikipedia. Explain, please. Which is basically what I did for the first week. I just made loads of edits. Some of them, well, I think I made 2 that were retracted. The rest of them were kept because I just linked to stuff and added a citation here or there, or got rid of some dead links. So some Wikipedians put citations in pages that are websites or that are PDF files, and the URL dies over years, or the PDF gets taken down for whatever reason, and the link on Wikipedia then dies and it becomes a dead link. So just removing the dead links or replacing the dead link. So doing really small edits, and use your user page. Just play with your user page in Sandbox, because it functions the exact same way as every Wikipedia page. You want to know how content pages work, or the table of content works? Just make some pages, use some hotkeys like Control-1, Control-2, Control-3 for the headings, and use the editor in your user page, because no one can say anything about your user page because it's yours. Do what you want.
And I think it's actually bringing it back to the conversation of using the right tools and how to figure out whether the tool is correct, which is one of our points. That's a really good example. Often when I speak and I hear, at the moment in the business world, we have been in Notion for ages, and Notion's kind of becoming a thing but it's coming into the public view now. Normal people, business owners are like, yeah, no, Notion sounds really fascinating, but I don't know where to start. And my biggest piece of advice is just play with one thing, one idea you want to turn into. And I think that's where, from a marketing standpoint, Notion templates should be shifting. Often what's happening is we're building these massive operating systems. And this is what I have done, and most of my templates are proper OSs, so to speak. Content planning, creating a course, can't remember my own bloody templates. Managing your courses that you've taken. All of these are big systems that you can use, and they're great, and they work really well. However, it doesn't teach you the fundamentals of using Notion. And then you can take the courses which tell you step-by-step instructions of this is a database, this is a page, this is a this is a that.
Or you could read a book.
Hey, we have no idea what's happening with it.
Oh, I do.
You do.
Plan to be coming out early next year. We are very close. Very close. I have been told marketing is in the conversation now, so they're doing the whole cover and markety stuff. So it's fairly public news now that I'm writing a book on Notion, and John is helping. So yeah, we can push the book a little bit, but yeah. So it's, I think, finding one use case to start with, and just
and it's about just going in there and playing. And I think that's where marketing templates and creating templates from Notion creator specific, because most of the viewers here are Notion specific because of the name. Like, market your templates in a different way. Right now, what's happening is we're kind of cannibalizing our own community. If you look on Twitter right now, a lot of the posts that are being made, I think Tem from optimization.
Yeah, Optem.
Yeah, we're saying, like, why are we cannibalizing this community by just talking about the our own templates when really it's not supposed to be for us, but they're being built for us, for other Notion users. Whereas which is putting Notion users, other newer Notion users, off in many ways, because it's too complicated, because it's trying to do everything. It's more of a, like, hey, look what I can create in Notion, versus here's what you actually need in Notion, here's where you can get started. So I really do, and this is what I said in my mastermind, and what I teach in my mastermind around becoming a Notion, business in Notion, creating a business in Notion, is around your templates shouldn't be massive. Your builds don't have to be big, because Notion is so freaking amazing to new people, because it allows them to think how their brain works and work how their brain works.
Yeah.
And so start creating different smaller ideas, which gives people a doorway into Notion. And then once they're in, they're in. Because once they're in, it's like, oh, I can move this here and I can move that there. And it helps people to start using it as normal human beings. So as Danny was saying with the Wikipedia page, just go in and play. Just go in and poke. Just see what's possible. So if you are new to Notion or trying to find the right tool and trying to figure out which one to use, just go play. Like, have some fun. Just see what's possible, because it's quite incredible how much you can do if you just start trying to play and understanding what you want to achieve as well. Because if you just want to look at Wikipedia, then don't worry about it, kind of thing. If we go back to the Wikipedia conversation, it's like, we'll then just keep exploring it, backlinks, blah blah blah, like you said. But if you want to actually edit, then edit and do a different thing, and it kind of changes depending on what context, as we say nearly every single week. The context of what you want to do is why you have to figure out context first. Always context first, which nobody does on popular 8-minute YouTube videos, because we're told to cut out all the context.
Context isn't fluff. So because Wikipedia is really fun with stats, I've gone into my contributions page, which anyone can do, by the way. Anyone can go into my contributions and see exactly what I'm doing, when and where and how.
And who?
No, it's just me. Well, find someone else. But I've gone in and I've had a look just to see where my contributions are. So a contribution is an edit. And 40.9% of my edits are on talk pages, and 33.6% are on user pages, i.e. my own pages. So only 16.9% of my edits, so only 220 edits are on actual articles, Wikipedia articles. Yes, those edits typically are longer than some of the other edits, but that just shows that, what's that, 75% of my edits aren't actually shown on main Wikipedia article pages. And I've done 1,305 edits currently. So that just shows that a lot of the edits that I'm doing are me either talking with other editors because I'm trying to find stuff out, or me just experimenting in my own user page. So most people don't even see the edits.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of other stats. Just as a reference, I've got my year count, so I know that percentage, those percentages of what namespace I'm in. So talk, user, main, user talk, Wikipedia, Wikipedia talk, or category. They are sort of like namespaces you can edit in. I have the percentage and number in a year count, in month counts, in a time card, so I know what time of day that I typically do edits on certain namespaces. I have all of my top edited pages, the assessments of those pages from projects, like I said earlier, and then like tons of other stats. And that's just one of the stats pages. I could go to any other stats page, and you can do that with any other user. So what I actually did is I compared my stats with someone else because I was just curious. And this just shows how nerdy I am, I have an average edit per day of 38.2. So I've done 38 edits every day for the last 35 days. Yeah. Yeah. But you can find that on all the other editors, which I think is quite nice to see when you go into a page. So when you go into an article, every article has stats, and you can see what user has contributed most to an article. You could then go to the user page, see what's going on, but there are stats on everything. So if you want to find something out, you could probably find it out. And because Wikipedia is a public website, page views. Every article page, Wikipedia article page, has page views. You can see how often the article is being viewed, which is kind of like a personal website stat, but for a Wikipedia article, which I think is pretty cool, pretty nifty.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I really find it quite interesting at what the opportunities of Wikipedia are not being explored. It's like I was intrigued because one of the words that I've been talking about in one of my first episodes is actually consistency, of like being consistent. And so I actually looked it up and I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. So they actually don't talk anything about that. And it's like, huh, interesting. So there was another page, intelligence, ironically, that I looked at after a conversation which sucked, and I wish I looked at it before, but oh well. And like there was actually etymology of the word consistency. I'm like, intelligence, and I'm like, I like etymology. I love the meaning behind words.
When you say look up, are you looking up a Wikipedia page or Google?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a Wikipedia page. I went to the intelligence Wikipedia page, which you can actually go to now, and see yourself. But there was the etymology of the word intelligence, and I'm like, that's really cool. Why don't more people do that? And then that's my brain going, I'm just going to go everywhere and put the etymology of every single word all the time now, because it's actually quite valuable to understand. That's me putting context that I care about, because this is the thing when it comes to doing anything. If you don't care about it, you're not going to do it.
The one thing I would say, which I don't think I mentioned when you start editing, is some pages, because I've just gone to the intelligence page and it's locked.
It's locked. I saw that as well. You can't edit some pages.
So what that basically means is you haven't been an editor long enough.
Yeah.
That's it's literally it, because some pages are good pages and they don't want anyone editing it. So the lock on the intelligence page is pretty easy. You just need to be on Wikipedia for a little bit and do a couple of edits.
4
I think
days.
It's like 5 what?
I think it's 4 days.
Yeah, I think it's like 20 edits or something. It's very, very small, and you'll do most of those edits in your user page anyway, so you'll get the contributions. You'll get a little notification that will tell you that. But if you have a user page, this is something I didn't mention, you can watch any page. So there's a star on every Wikipedia article and every Wikipedia page. So that's a user page, a talk page, an article page, or a Wikipedia help page. You can star it. So anytime anyone edits that page, you get a notification that someone's edited that page. So if you're working on a page, or if you've edited a page and you've created something and someone's decided to vandalize it, you can just go back and say, hey, no, revert, which is how Wikipedians keep track of the articles that they care about. And you can go into your watch list and essentially have an inbox. Actually, if I click on my watch list now, let's see if there's anything in there. So I can see list of sports, the talk page of memory biases, fatigue, sport, testing effect. Someone's edited testing effect. Oh, citation cleanup. Okay, fair enough. Snatch and personal. So I can see that straight away. And then I can see the difference that they've made, because it's kind of like a view history. So I can see what it was and then what they've changed it to. But yeah, and then there's comments about everything, and I have that watch list, so I don't need to go to every page that I've edited. And if I am interested in something and someone edits something, maybe it's new research. Someone's added in a comment of new research. It's on my watch list, so I don't need to go and find the paper because someone's already put it on Wikipedia.
That's actually really cool. In general, that's actually really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, to find new research like that is a little bit nice, I gotta say.
And I mean, if researchers were to like share their stuff, I mean, this is me arguing for research. Yes, you get like a Google Scholar announcement, but you get an announcement for like everything and all the papers, and it's kind of annoying a little bit because you just get blasted with papers. Similar with most other paper suggestion algorithms, you just get blasted with papers. Like, I don't want to read through these 150 papers every single week with all this new stuff. But if there is a good article that is fairly new that someone has read and gone, that applies to this sentence or this paragraph or this article, and they just put it in there, and you're watching that article. You can see who's watching articles as well, as a stat, but you get notified. And you can see, like, straight away, if you go into your watch list page, you'll be able to see the green, either green or red number. So what's actually gone on, whether they've taken stuff away, added stuff, whether it's a minor change or a big change, and then a comment that they've made. And you can just talk with the editor and be like, why did you do this? Or can you help me with this, that, and the other? Because you have a link to their talk page because it's a user profile. If it's not a user profile and it's an IP address, 9 times out of 10, it was probably vandalism. But yeah, so intelligence. I guess we can relate this to the type of editors people are, because I thought when I went into Wikipedia that all the editors are going to be like everyday people or just really nerdy, interested people in one small thing. I will say a lot of editors are interested in stats and numbers and facts and figures, which is understandable. But there are actually PhD students, obviously like myself, but other PhD students and academics and researchers and published authors that edit Wikipedia. So is it for really intelligent people, however we see that? No, it can be for everyone and anyone. And I think that's a nice segue to move into intelligence.
Beautiful. Now, I will say that everything I've written, I found this one interestingly hard.
Interesting description.
Thank you. That's using my intelligence there. That depends on your definition.
Exactly.
I found this one really tough.
Do you want to explain what the section is for those that are new?
Oh yes, if you're new here, we look at words that we all use, but don't, and when the meaning is different for each individual, because as we both believe that meanings are in people, not the words themselves, and we need to open up the discussion on what it means to us, so that we can have different viewpoints, learn more about other perspectives. And if you've watched the last week's episode, that was one of the things that changed for you as well. Like, your shift in viewing was because of opening up a conversation in different perspectives. Instead of everyone saying one person's right, one person is wrong. Look, I am expressive with my hands. That is never going to stop. I need a proper stand, not a bin. Anyway.
I smack my mic all the time, but it doesn't fall over because it's on a boom arm. Oh, giggle fit. Oh dear. You have your mic in a bin.
Yes. Yeah. It's a little bin for people on the not channel. Go on the channel. You'll see the bin.
Okay. Right. Engage brain. Engage brain. Switch on. There's no switch. There's no switch. It just, yeah. Okay. So with your word then, with your points behind the word, do you want to just blurt out what you're currently thinking if the 3 points that you put down have kind of like changed?
I think they have, but they haven't. I think I don't like the words I'm using to describe intelligence. So I'm going to bring them out and then open it up to discussion, because I think that's actually the best possible way of working with this one. Approach, yes, that's the word I was looking for. It's a measurement of understanding was my first point, which is where I started. And I find that it's hard to grasp, which I didn't like. For me, that was my point. It's just like, yes, but then you have to look at what understanding is and then what that actually is, and it was really hard to describe. And I think this is one of those words where we use it a lot, but we don't actually know what it means. Like, there isn't one meaning.
Do you want to carry on, or do you want to?
Yeah, you're welcome to come. I don't know that it's a lot of these words.
Was that kind of like your first point?
Yes.
Okay, so I will sort of like riff on that a little bit, because my second point is measurement of level of understanding. And the way that I would approach this is some words and terms can't be defined because they are too abstract. And so this was an approach from, oh wow, what's his name? Ludwig something or other. He was a philosopher. I think actually I tagged him on the knowledge page. So his thing maybe on the Wikipedia knowledge page, Ludwig was something, but basically his research into philosophical epistemological approaches to words, essentially knowledge of knowledge, is to say, this is how this word is used in natural language, and this meaning will change depending on the use. So understanding is dependent on the use. You can have lower levels, like deeper levels and shallow levels of understanding. And I think intelligence is the contextual measure of the use of that level of understanding. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, and I'm just going to riff on, like, follow that up. I actually have gone on to the Wikipedia page on intelligence because I was intrigued at what a bigger, vaster perspective on that was. And there isn't a clear definition on there either, which I really found quite fascinating. Like, there are quotations from different people around it, and I think the one that there's two that align with my view of thinking, and one of them is the ability to deal with cognitive complexity, which I quite liked. I thought that was quite nice. And then goal-directed adaptive behavior. So the first one was by Linda, I can't even try, Linda Gottfriedson. And then that was the ability to deal with cognitive complexity. And then you've got Robert Sternberg and William Salter, goal-directed adaptive behavior. I found them really interesting and a little chunky and meaty to just dive into and talk about that more. But those fit quite well. I mean, actually, so does the one above. You're looking at the page now, yes? I assume.
Sort of. My approach was slightly different when I looked at the page. I went to the talk page, and just to show how complex intelligence is, it's in the psychology project, the biology project, and the philosophy project.
Yeah.
And it's top importance, high importance, high importance. And they are three, what I would say is completely different projects, like psychology, biology, and philosophy. And it's in all three of them.
Yeah, and also there's a lack of, I found this interesting, intelligence is seen by other cultures, which made me go, oh yeah, we don't actually have a clear definition. Like, how is that different depending on who you are and where you are in the world? That triggered me. I'm like, oh, that's a fascinating conversation, because this cannot be as clearly defined as, like, understanding. We have a universal idea of what that means, and there is something you can sort of grasp.
Have you been on the understanding page?
No, I'm gonna have to go there now.
It's linked in the intelligence page, of course, but I've been exploring the understanding page as well. I think we explored understanding, didn't we?
Yes,
in a previous episode.
We did. And yeah. It was really interesting.
Yeah, what understanding means. Yeah, because Wikipedia obviously have it in the understanding page, and understanding is linked to knowledge, and knowledge is part of intelligence. And I'm gonna go on to my second point, because my third point, but the second point of talking. Level of understanding was one section, and I think knowledge is another section, and knowledge is another word that doesn't have a definition. Knowledge is based off of, if I can remember correctly, beliefs, truth, and justification. I think are those three, which again are words that we've covered. Belief and truth are certainly words we've covered, and justification is something that I don't think we need to cover too much, because a justification and a rationale is based behind fact or belief, which again we sort of like covered through. And knowledge is that sort of like collection of things. However, there are, let me get the word right, Gettier cases, I believe, where a true belief that is justified is still wrong, which means it can't be knowledge, like true knowledge, if it's still wrong, which are the Gettier cases, which is where I think Ludwig in the knowledge page talks about this idea that it's about how we use those words. So inside of intelligence, I think knowledge is a collection of justified beliefs that are true to us, which can build up our level of understanding, which can increase our depth of understanding, which in turn increases our intelligence around that context in the use of the knowledge and understanding. That's how I framed it.
Yeah, that's kind of, that there is a good summary of kind of my meaning. Quite like part of my, this is such a big word, which is why it's so hard, because also you've got intelligence and then you've got intellect, and I'm like, oh, then we touch on that. And I think intelligence and intellect are often used,
they're used synonymously, but they're not.
Yeah, which I found really interesting. I'm like, yeah, I don't think they're the same.
There are some small differences. Most people, it doesn't really matter what the difference is, but when you're talking in specifics, in nuanced cases, especially in academics, you need to be particular about the words that you use, as one, to keep consistent conversation, because I've read some articles where halfway through they start using different terms and I'm like, I'm lost now. But it also means it keeps a conversation coherent to everyone, which is why I think updating research is very useful, either using Wikipedia or whatever, because intelligence, therefore, is maintained. It's not like, we're using these metrics, these words to define this thing or mean this thing, and we now have an intelligence around this, and then suddenly use different words. Because if you use different words, jargon, lingo, terms, meanings, now your prior intelligence, looking at the Bayesian model of Bayesian brain hypothesis, your prior intelligence, your prior beliefs, your prior knowledge will now be somewhat null and void because it's based on different premises, which means, okay, now our intelligence needs to shift drastically because of these new words and terms used. Whereas if you keep those words and terms the same, and then you have a different level, a different sort of like type of intelligence on top of this new thing, you now have two intelligence chunks which can form a global intelligence. And again, this is bringing in another way of using it in language, intelligence being used in language, I think. Hopefully that's
so one thing that I want to bring in, which is not a note I originally had, but is actually, as we're talking, it's kind of more coming to the forefront, is that act of self-awareness. That is a form of intelligence. By having that understanding of who you are, by having that awareness of who you are. I think awareness is one of our words that we've covered. If we haven't, that needs to be a word we cover, because oh my god, I can go deep on that one, because that is something I very much care about in my work, and that I have researched, because obviously Gestalt psychology.
Have a look at the Wikipedia page on that.
Oh yes. And I think I actually did. I did on the Gestalt psychology page as well, which links somewhat. But I think self-awareness is a form of intelligence, because it's information that you can bring together to develop your understanding of something. I think that kind of summarizes my thoughts on that quite nicely, of like what I think intelligence is, and kind of links to the measurement.
Have you got any other points in there? Because I've got
being
three.
Being clear on your understanding, the ability to share ideas you have. I don't like them. I don't like those 2 points. They weren't quite. They weren't.
Yeah, the ability to share, I don't think relates to intelligence directly. I think it's an indirect link.
It's an indirect link, which is why I wasn't going to bring it up, but I thought I'd share it just for that case of sharing it. But I think that self-awareness is a form of intelligence, and is actually quite a big form of it, because if you're not aware that you have intelligence, are you intelligent?
That was actually like my first point.
Oh, was it? That's where my brain's like. It's just
not that like said there. So my first point is multiple intelligences.
Yes.
And for those that haven't read the book or read any research around multiple intelligences, you can be intelligent in various contexts. You can be linguistically intelligent, I can't say the word, auditorily or auditorily, whatever. Listen intelligent, so you can hear things, tone.
Listen intelligent.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. So listening to tone, and then loads of other different types of intelligence. But you can, so this is where multiple intelligences and the theory of multiple intelligences, you can be intelligent in something and not know it,
Mm.
because you haven't explored that context or environment, which is one of the critiques of education. Because some people in education are intelligent at something. They are naturally intelligent at something because of either the context they've been brought up in, the way that their mind thinks, loads of different things involved in that. But they haven't been exposed to that environment yet, so they don't know they are intelligent at that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, yeah. This is like the exact reverse of last week. Last week's episode of like where it was a real deep seated discussion. This one's just like, yep, pretty much, no answers. Yep.
You need to do more research so we can have a deeper conversation, because I feel like every time I say something, you're like, damn it, yes. I don't know what to say.
I do need to do research, and I want to do more research. That's kind of,
I guess not research, maybe just thinking about stuff. I do a lot of thinking about things. So maybe do some like pre-thinking, because that's certainly what I'm doing.
yeah. I come at it very naturally because I'll just end up forgetting.
Yeah.
As soon as I come in.
The other 2 points I had was comparison. So the reason I have comparison on there is because intelligence is a socially built construct. It's not like nature or thing. It's something that we have gone, yes, we have intelligence. We have somewhat tried to define the meaning of it, which we've already explored. But intelligence requires comparison, because you can't be intelligent without some metric to say you are more intelligent than that person or that thing, that object. There needs to be some sort of comparison, which is why I think that, I could go off in so many directions because this is education, literally in a nutshell. You can be intelligent in a group of people and have high intelligence, but you can also be really like a low intelligence in a different group of people, which drastically affects people's grades in school and education. And that's like relative age effect. Go have a look at it. That's one of those things that intelligence, I don't think, exists without comparison.
Yeah, intelligence is subjective.
Yeah,
depending on the context you're in, depending on.
I don't think intelligence is subjective. I think the global intelligence is subjective, but you can have state or trait intelligence can be objective, i.e. your intelligence at doing, I don't know, mathematical equations. Your level of intelligence doing that specific task could be quite high compared to someone else, and that's an objective level of intelligence. That's how I would see it. And this, it kind of relates to fatigue in like state, trait, perceived, and objective. Intelligence I see in a similar way, because global intelligence is certainly subjective because there is so many elements, multiple intelligences, that contribute, which we can't measure. But there are some times and tasks and things that we can do that can measure intelligence at that point, like the IQ test, for example. It's awful for measuring intelligence, but it's an objective measure of intelligence at specific tasks.
I like it.
Yes. My last point was fluid.
Ooh.
Yeah. There's loads of things I could say, but I just share your thoughts. You went, oh, I'm assuming your brain went.
Yeah, because that's actually very true, because you can gain intelligence. Can you lose intelligence though?
Brain damage.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It's a harsh example, but it's the most obvious example. Brain damage. Or memory loss.
We were touching on it earlier about memory. And how does intelligence link to memory? Because if you can't store the memory of your what you know and your learning and your understanding, then are you intelligent? So yeah, the fluidity of intelligence is very fascinating, because it does. It goes, if you're having a bad day, then you're going to do stupid things that don't make sense. But if you're having a good day and and intelligence kind of flows throughout the day, you can have a moment where you're in that state of like just heightened focus or heightened thoughts, and you can come up with ideas really quickly. And
Yeah. I use fluid in my way of thinking because, I mean, that's why I've got space, because space is fluid. Space is always moving, always changing, always adjusting. And fluid, I just thought was the best word to put there. It's a word I use a lot, but I don't think I've spoken about much. And the way I see intelligence is that it's fluid, because it can get bigger, get smaller. There can be ripples, there can be different times, changes. You can look at it and it can be shallow, but actually really deep underneath. Or it could look really deep underneath, but actually quite shallow, like looking at a puddle, like fluid water or something like that. And that's how I see intelligence. And this is why I think I would attach lots of words to this fluid analogy for words that don't have a definition, because it's too fluid in natural language for it to be defined.
Yeah. I think a lot of the words we speak about on here are very fluid. Because there's fluid understanding.
It's a word that I like to use, but when I use it, I always need to explain it because people look at me and go, "What?"
Yeah. Maybe we should put that down as a word we talk about.
I'm not doing that in 5 points. Yeah, that's not happening in 5 points.
Now you've got to be able to explain it really simply, like the Feynman technique.
You did that on purpose.
Yes, I did.
You deliberately did that.
Oh, yes, I did.
And people still reference the friggin' Feynman technique. Yeah, it's funny. Have you tried looking for the Feynman technique on Wikipedia?
Yeah, I have. I know you got rid of it.
I didn't. It wasn't me.
Oh wow!
It wasn't me. I was having a conversation with other editors. There were 3-4 of us just talking backwards and forwards. I mean, it's part of the video that I posted on Friday, that the Feynman technique, it wasn't just I decided to do some research. It was I didn't agree with what was on Wikipedia, and I did my own research, and 3 other people did their own research, and they couldn't find anything either. So we came to a consensus and said, this page is not a useful article. It is essentially pointless. So someone else, so I was at a point where I was like, okay, maybe we should actually merge this. And someone else basically had already done it. When I went to the page to merge it, they'd already done it. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, so they just combined it with, I think it's platypus learning.
Yes. Yeah, I find that really fascinating. That was really cool.
Because it's so intertwined. And that is where I think the development of Wikipedia can certainly be beneficial if other people have conversations, because I mean there were 3 or 4 of us having a conversation about the Feynman technique, which is extremely nuanced and niche, and if you were to do that with all of the other topics in science, have 3 or 4 academics talk about something, actually this is basically the same as this, we're just going to put it under the same article, and maybe if it expands later on, we can do something and add like a main article to it, so we could have a section in kind of like a top tier article, and then a main article link in it, which I'm sure you've seen on Wikipedia, where you go into a section and then underneath the section it's got main article and then a link to the main article. That's actually a template, so you don't have to do any of the formatting, you just type in for template, but that's an editor thing. But yeah, it just means that you can merge pages that should be merged and get rid of pages that are just duplicated or repeated, which happens unfortunately on Wikipedia because some people don't find the page or aren't as due diligent as other editors, but there are editors to correct it and help.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice wrap up. The next week's we'll announce it now. Next week's is the last week's episodes is for 2021. I was trying to remember what year it was and I couldn't.
So to translate, we'll have one more episode next week. Well, week after.
To translate,
well, it's not next week because this week's episode is next week's.
Yes. So in 2 weeks will be the last episode. This is the penultimate episode.
Yeah. So this is the penultimate episode. Next week will be another week, and then we'll be back in January.
That's the plan. But the last episode will be a bit of a longer one because we plan on doing a review of the episodes we've done this season, i.e. Towards the end of this year, and having a bit of a discussion, a roundtable discussion about the different episodes, what we got out of it, what changed from it. And then maybe even looking forwards as to what we're going to do in next year, because the bonus episode is me riffing a little bit on some projects I plan on doing in 2022. But it'd be interesting to see where this community and this conversation can move in 2022.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. Yeah, so we will. That will be our next episode. So look forward to that.
You're just waiting for me to push the stop.
And
I was about to click.
Because people keep, I know a number of people have said, "Can you tell us the word?" I know what our word for next week could be, which I haven't told you, but I'm telling you now. Review.
Well, that makes sense considering like we're reviewing stuff.
It was either going to be review or reflection. I couldn't decide which one.
Don't do reflection.
Okay, review. You've already researched reflection. Yes, you have. I remember us talking about it.
Yeah, I've done like 3 academic essays on reflection, so don't bother.
All right. Bye.
Bye.